Should a man wait for his testosterone levels to come back to normal when going off cycle before contemplating going back on cycle? That's the question. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RS Television, rsmuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your weekly 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. I am in a hotel room, as you can tell right now, in Dubai for the 2025 Dubai Muscle Show. Full disclosure, I flew in today, had an event earlier, and I'm absolutely exhausted, but the show must go on as we are going to go right into the questions. The first two questions on the show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Wondering how many weeks once you come off cycle till your test numbers are back to normal?
You know, it's kind of a loaded question because everyone's body responds really, really differently. And it depends what you do for PCT as well, post-cycle therapy. So let's say, you go off a cycle that you're using long-acting testosterone on. Now, first of all, you got to understand that long-acting testosterone is going to be in your system for 3 to 4 weeks after the cycle stops. That's why I always tell people it's silly not to go off for 8 weeks after your cycle, because 3 or 4 of those weeks, you're still going to have something in your system. Now, assuming while you're going off and those levels are coming down, you're taking some HCG and Clomid to bring those, to bring your natural levels up a little bit. What happens invariably is once you're off, you really can't figure out what's going on until at least week 5, right? Because week 4, you might still have some stuff in your system that you took 4 weeks early. Week 5, now you're going to probably be at a low, where you might start feeling low. And, some people might have their levels back up already to 500, 500. Other guys might be in the toilet at 50. It really depends on just how your body decides to turn itself back on. Now, if you're still on HCG, you might be artificially elevated. But I'm assuming after 4 weeks, you do your first 2 weeks of HCG, second 2 weeks of Clomid or Nolvadex, and then you're off for 4 weeks. During that period, usually you're pretty low. Now, in my experience, when I was trying to have kids, and I started taking HCG and the HMG protocol, at some point, once I had my first kid and I went off, and I didn't go back on cycle because I knew I was going to have another kid, my levels kind of were stabilized. But it took me about 6 months, I would say, before my levels went back up. But just because mine were staying in that 550 range, they were dropping down to 400 occasionally, but mostly they were in the average 500 range. Not everyone is like that. Most guys are, below 200. So when you say come back to normal, are you talking normal when you're 18 years old, or normal for what you are right now as a 35, 36-year-old guy, And that is variable. So the real good thing is that you don't have to wait till your levels get to a certain amount before you go back on cycle. So if you're cycling and you're competing and doing this, and you clean out for 8 weeks, who cares what your levels are? I mean, to be honest with you, the lower they are, the better. Because the lower they are, the more sensitive your androgen receptors get. Because your body doesn't know it doesn't have enough testosterone. It thinks it doesn't have enough androgen receptors. So it keeps making more and more and more of them. So the longer you're off, the more your androgen sensitivity increases. Because the more receptors you have, the more more sensitivity you have to these androgens. So that's why it's such a good idea. It's not a detoxification situation. It's stay off so that you produce more androgen receptors so that you respond better.
Second question, again, these first two from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Should a woman get a different blood work panel than a man?
The stuff that we test for bodybuilding purposes, as far as organ health goes, kidneys, which is creatinine, BUN, liver function tests, which really aren't specific to liver; they're mostly specific to muscle. The cholesterol levels, LDL, HDL, glucose control, blood glucose, and hemoglobin A1C. These are all stuff, red blood cells, which is, how many hemoglobin, hematocrit. These are all things that both men and women should get tested. The only difference women really have is progesterone and estrogen, but we test estrogen for men anyway, just to see, if they're too high. So, I know some of the women's panels are more expensive because I think they throw some other esoteric stuff on there that's really probably not necessary. I mean, thyroid function, we test that for men too. So I give the same recommendations. Like if you ask me, you can email me, I'll send you a free list of all the blood work you probably should get done. That's a good idea. And it's the same for men and women. So I really don't see a difference, and I don't know why they would charge more, but I do know some places do charge more.
Before we go to the rest of our questions, our friends at Titan Medical have a sale on their weight loss medications, Dave. So $100 off 5-amino IMQ. Actually, rather, let me backtrack. So $100 off all weight loss medications. So they're broken down in tiers. $25 off. There's a list of them: 5-amino 1-MQ, testo, fencine, L-carnitine, Prometheus. We could put up the list in the article description. $50 off single therapy, so GLP-1s like semaglutide, tirzepatide, retatrutide. $100 off combo plans. Add a growth peptide for maximum fat loss and muscle protection alongside any GLP-1 therapy, such as tesamorelin, sermorelin, CJC, ipamorelin, hexarelin, masmorelin, IGF-1, or MK677.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people are looking for those GLPs, the Mounjaro or the retatrutide, and the Mounjaro being the tirzepatide. They got the best deals on them. I think they're giving $100, 50 or $100 off those therapies now. So a lot of pharmacies don't even have it because there's so many people who are using it. I'm talking about regular people, like just regular fat people are taking it now to lose weight. For bodybuilding purposes, if you're a cheater on your diet, and you tend to get hungry in between meals, it's a great appetite suppressant. But remember, don't use it and then not eat, because if you don't eat, you're going to lose muscle. So continue to eat your prescribed meals. It's just going to help you not eat between meals. And one of the things very important to remember, when you use any of these GLP-1 agonists, you have to take Fiberlize with it. You're crazy if you don't. You will not poop, I promise you. It slows your digestive tract. It's hard to poop anyway when you're dieting. And now throw that on top of it, which is slowing down how fast your digestive tract is going. The problem is that the colon pulls water out of the fecal matter, the stool. If it sits in the colon too long, it pulls so much out that the poop turns to like rocks essentially, and then you can't get it out. I know it's disgusting, but that's what Fiberlize gels. That makes everything gel up, so it just kind of slides out. So even though it's going slower, it's still sliding out. It's not going to get stuck. And because a lot of guys and women who take these GLP-1 agonists get impacted, and then they have to go to the hospital. And they got to get they basically got to get it sucked out of them, and that's not a pleasant procedure. Let me tell you. So take your Fiberlize twice a day if you're going to take any of the GLP-1 agonists. And remember, when you go to Titan, tell them RX Muscle Dave sent you, because they're going to give you that great discount.
Dave, you want to plug the app before we go to the rest of the questions?
Yeah. The app obviously is the Dave Palumbo Experience app. You can download it from the Android store and your iTunes store. You get me as your coach in your back pocket. You get all my videos, all my writings in one place, organized. I answer everyone's questions in an open forum. So you see everyone's questions and everyone's answers. It's a great learning experience. I do a Q&A video exclusively for the app members every single week. And so you get the opportunity to look at that. That's a great learning experience. Plus all my cycles are there. Off-season, pre-contest, beginners, advanced, men, women, all my diets, the keto diet, this carb cyclical diet. Everything is in that app. It's a great, great resource. It's only $29 a month. If you subscribe, you can subscribe once again at the Android store, the iTunes store. Thank you for the support. It's because you guys out there are demanding it that I keep doing it.
Let's go to the rest of our questions from our YouTube community page. Should one stop bodybuilding with very mild left ventricular hypertrophy, knowing that it was caused by high blood pressure, untreated for years, assuming that it's in perfect range and it's reversed significantly throughout the years? I'm not sure, but I think you mentioned that you had it too at some point.
Listen, anyone who lifts super heavy And that doesn't have anything to do with high blood pressure because when you lift heavy, you're generating high blood pressures while you're working out. That tells the heart the body needs blood delivered to the muscles very quickly. And what's the best way to do that? Well, make the heart thicker, like you're making your bicep thicker. So when the heart contracts, it propels the blood faster through the bloodstream to the muscles. The problem is when the muscle gets thicker, okay, the chamber size gets smaller. Okay, when the chamber size gets smaller, even though it's projecting blood faster, it's releasing less blood. So your cardiac output or your ejection fraction will go down. That doesn't mean that your heart is damaged. It means that you have an athletic heart. And that needs to be distinguished between a defective heart. Because if you have a defective heart and you don't work out at all, but your heart is all thickened and enlarged because it's not functioning well and it can't do its job, that's a different story. The problem is that the doctors don't differentiate between a damaged heart, okay, and a athletic heart. And it looks the same to them when they do all the diagnostic testing. The problem is the guys who have the athletic hearts are in the gym killing it. They're not short of breath. They don't feel bad. They feel great, and then they go to the doctor and they tell them they're on their deathbed. So take it with a grain of salt. Like I said, if you feel good and you're able to exercise at a high level and you have no blockages in your coronary arteries, because you check that with a cardiac CT scan, and we've talked about that before, then don't let these doctors tell you that your heart is damaged if it's not damaged. They're just, once again, an echocardiogram just gives you cardiac output. It doesn't tell you why your cardiac output might be reduced because you're delivering blood faster while you're training. So athletic heart versus deficient heart, you got to make that distinction.
This question about the Roy test. I had used your Roy test here recently on some test SIP that came back as propionate. Then used test D to check their Primo. It read that the Primo was fake. I'm about to retest their test SIP again with new Roy test I had ordered from your website. The seller tried to tell me that the Roy kits aren't accurate. So how accurate are the testing kits to test the products that he ordered?
The test kits are really, really accurate. Okay, I sell so many of them on DavePalumbo.com, and you know why? Because people realize for 20 something bucks, you'd be crazy not to test your drugs, especially if they're underground. Because like this person found out, thought he was using test SIP, he was using test propionate. All right, and this happens all the time, especially with growth hormone. 50% of it out there is fake. 50% of the Anavar is fake. It's not Anavar, it's actually Dianabol. It happens all the time. The kits are very accurate. The only time they're not accurate is when people make the drugs in MCT oil. Sometimes MCT oil can mess up the ester test. So in other words, you can tell what drug it is, but you're not sure what ester it is. So it's testosterone, but you can't tell if it's cypionate and anthidipropionate. And that's only if they're using MCT oil. That's the only time it screws up the test, because the D vial will tell you if it's an injectable and if it's a real drug. But then the B or A vial, depending on which one it recommends you use, tells you what the ester is. So is it testcypionate or is it testananthate? Is it testcypionate or is it testpropionate? Okay, is it tren enanthate? Is it trenacetate? And then for the orals, the C vial is definitive. It tells you if it's a real oral. For Anavar, all you need is the C vial. The C vial, if it comes back golden yellow, you got real Anavar. It doesn't even matter what the B vial says. It's the C vial. Now, for the other drugs, you need to use the B vial to differentiate, like for Dianabol, Anadrol, Halotestin, and all the drugs are their generic names. So, like fluoxymesterone is Halotestin, and methandrostenolone is Dianabol, and oxymethanolone is Anadrol. So you got to you'll look at the chart on my DavePalumbo.com website under the Roy test, and all that information is there. Very accurate. Like I said, I sell it because I knew that people needed this, and I needed to make it available to people. And when Bill Llewellyn came out with it, I said, Bill, I'm going to be your guy to sell this, because I said, I feel so terrible that people in this day and age have to use underground stuff. We need this product. They need to know what the stuff is, if it's real or not. So check it out at DavePalumbo.com. Like I said, it's very reasonably priced.
I pulled up the question. Sorry about that. off-season cycles. Usually off-season, you recommend test and one anabolic. So he gives you the options of test and EQ, test and DECA, test with Tren, or test with Primobolan. What would you suggest for an off-season scenario?
Yes, all of the above. So what I recommend doing is like do test and an anabolic for 6 weeks, and then switch to a test and then another anabolic for 6 weeks, and then after 6 weeks do it again. So you might start out with test and EQ for 6 weeks. Then you'll go to test and Trenbolone for 6 weeks. Then you go to test and DECA for 6 weeks. Then you can go back and start the EQ again, test and EQ. Or you can say, you know what, I want to do a test and Masteron one for 6 weeks. I try to save like the short acting, the Winstrol, Anavar type stuff, or like I'm trying to think what else. Like even trinacetate, I save that pre-contest. I don't do that off season.
He wrote this long. I hate this show. I would in the morning, like 105 over 66 blood pressure. It raises a bit when the day progresses, 125 over 75 in the evening. Can I start using Clen with that low blood pressure?
Yeah, clenbuterol drops your blood pressure a little bit, but not that much. The key is don't take too much of it at one time. So you should only take 20 micrograms per dose. I know guys that I get them up to 80 micrograms a day, and all of a sudden I find out they're taking 80 in one shot, and their blood pressure is like in the toilet bowl, and they feel like they're passing out all day long, or at least as long as the clenbuterol works. Always space it out, 20 micrograms per dose. So if you start with 20 twice a day and you go to 23 times a day, you don't double up the morning dosage. You go 20, 20, 20 throughout the day. And that's if you do that, you'll never really drop your blood pressure that much.
What is the weirdest, craziest thing you've seen backstage at a bodybuilding competition? It could be pump of food, athlete drama, people passing out. Craziest thing from your competing careers to now, obviously, as a coach that you've seen backstage?
You've seen a lot of great, back when I first started competing, I would see guys with we were talking about, how terrible, what we had to go through over the last 24 hours. And I had guys tell me, yeah, I haven't brushed my teeth in a week. And I'm thinking, no wonder what that smell is. And I'm like, why haven't you brushed your teeth? Oh, sodium fluoride. You can't have that sodium in the toothpaste. I said, well, you're not swallowing the toothpaste, and you know how small of an amount it is in it. I said, it's the fluoride. It's a sodium atom attached to a fluoride atom. You're not taking in a significant amount because my coach told me I shouldn't do it. This guy's breath stunk like fucking fish, like that was 20 days old. It was horrendous. Another guy stunk he hadn't showered in a week because he thought that the water that he put on his skin would get absorbed into his body and make him hold water. And this guy fucking reeked. I was ready to throw up. It was so disgusting. I've seen guys backstage eating drinking like a bottle of vodka. I'm like, what are you doing? Oh, that brings out the veins. I'm like, I got veins and I haven't had any alcohol. I said, I don't think any of your veins are coming out. You could drink that whole bottle. All you got to do is wind up in the hospital unconscious. I said. So people just do dumb shit, and then they wonder what happened to them. I don't know what happened. I dieted so hard for 16 weeks. I did everything. I tanned, and I didn't do well. Well, you look terrible. You ruined yourself I had a friend. I used to do his diet. He took so many diuretics. I told him to take a half a Diazide the night before. He took starting 5 days out, he was taking diuretics. He took like 2 Lasix the morning of the show. He looked like he had this red posing suit on. I'll never forget. He's not with us anymore. May he rest in peace. But one of my friends said he looks like a stop sign because all he was a head, and his body was completely drained of all liquids. He was completely dehydrated, and. But some people do stupid stuff. That's why I always tell people, don't do kooky shit the last week. Do exactly what you've been doing. Because the less you change, the better you're going to look on stage.
TRT related question on 43 on 100 mg TRT twice a week. I used to be obese, 267 pounds, went down to 170. So congrats on that. I train 5 days a week and eat clean, but want to add some muscle. Can I still make decent gains on 100 mg TRT twice a week?
I think you can. I think 200 milligrams a week is a good amount. I think that it's enough that if you eat right, you train right, you diet, you'll lose fat. The TRT will help you maintain muscle and you maybe even put a few pounds on, and you can have no side effects. It's really the best of all worlds. It's a little higher, obviously, than TRT levels because 500 you said 500 milligrams, right?
No, I think I said 100.
Or 200 milligrams, 100 twice a week. 200
Yeah.
milligrams is
Oh,
the
yeah,
high
yeah. Sorry
end
about
of,
that. Twice a week, right? Yeah.
200 milligrams a week is the high end of TRT, so I think you're going to be fine. And I know a lot of guys that will put muscle on taking that amount. So absolutely, you're doing the right thing. I think that's a very safe cycle, and I think you can probably look really, really good.
Question about Urs Kalaczynski, given that what we just saw in his open class debut, how many years do you think he realistically needs in order to be a top threat at the Mr. Olympia level?
Listen, it's impossible for me to predict if he'll ever be a top threat at the Olympia level. I think in another 2 years, he's going to be very dangerous because I think he will continue to grow. He's young. He has plenty of time. There's no reason to rush. He put a ton of muscle on already. If he adds another 10 pounds this offseason of real muscle weight, I think he's going to be dangerous. He's got a good structure. He's got a small waist. It's just a matter of how is this muscle going to look once it's on his body, and how is he going to display it on stage? If he can handle that and do a good job at that, I think he can do very well in the open.
Question about the best calves. Who had the best calves between Mike Matarazzo and Rubiel Mosquera?
Matarazzo's calves were pretty freaky, I got to tell you. I'll tell you whose calves might be the freakiest of all time, though. Eric Fankhauser. I don't know if anyone even remembers him. The guy had I think he was from PA. Freaky calves, like just genetically freaky, you know. But Matarazzo's were like almost like mutant calves, I like to call them. Like they didn't even have a lot of shape to them. They were just big and round and gnarly. I thought that was pretty impressive because they matched his arms. He had these huge arms and huge calves, and you know that's just something. It was a gift from God, essentially, you know.
So we'll close it out with this one, interesting one here. I'm hearing from my sources that legit pharma-grade anabolics are becoming more limited due to tariff strains globally. That said, more lifters are starting to resort to the black market for underground gear. Do you think there's any ramifications going that route if that's the only option? Obviously, your test kits are a good source to make sure that it's true, but what are your thoughts if essentially we get to the point where black market seems to be the most viable, I mean, in his words, says only, but I'll say most viable option to get gear?
Yeah, it's a very disturbing situation out there because there is very little legitimate gear out there. And I highly recommend that all bodybuilders sign up with some sort of a, rejuvenation clinic, at least to get on their replacement protocols. So at least when they're not on cycle, maybe, and if they're not off and they need to take something, at least they have some TRT to take. Because I know guys that were on major cycles and then they went on TRT and they actually grew better on the TRT because the other stuff was crap. So you just don't know. And I don't know if at some point maybe they'll start making the actual raw materials here in the United States. It's possible. It's possible because we're trying to get away from dependence on other countries for all our drugs. Why not make some testosterone in the United States to make it available for people who are on TRT? I mean, that only makes sense. So that's one possibility of what could happen. The problem is that, once again, you just don't know if what you're getting is legit, and even if it does have the real drug in it, you don't know what else is in there. And that's a scary, scary thought. And the tariffs are real. I mean, because I try to order this like flea and tick spray for my animals. I use it like sometimes if my snakes get snake mites, and I can't get it anymore. And they said actually on the website, no, and I keep getting like promotions from them. I'm like, I'm trying to buy your product, I can't buy it. They're like, we don't ship to the United States because the tariffs are too high. We can't make any money. So there's a definite reality to that. I still think there's a lot of gear around, but you know what? If there isn't in the future, you're going to see a lot more people having to resort to other avenues. once again, I hope they start making testosterone and other drugs like that in this country so that it makes it a little easier for athletics to get a hold of them, rehab guys, and then people who are on hormone replacement, obviously. So we'll see what happens.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Again, if you haven't already done so, subscribe below. All new episodes of Heavy Muscle Radio, After Hours podcast, as well as Dave going to Greg Valentino's house and eating infamous 38-year-old pasta, the same pasta,
Delicious.
by the way,
Delicious.
that Lee Haney ate, and it still tastes great 38 years later.
I hear that it has fermented some and created some special peptides in it that actually lead to longevity. And I hear that if you ferment your pasta for 35 plus years, you actually, if you ingest these peptides, it'll enable you to live to 150 years old. So we'll have to see if it comes true or not, you know.
I thought you were going to go the route of it's going to enable you to make your bodybuilding comeback or something
No,
like
that.
No anabolic properties in that pasta.
No anabolic properties whatsoever.
All right. Well, again, that's going to do it for this episode. Subscribe below, hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything that we have coming up. I'm here in Dubai for the Dubai Muscle Show. So tomorrow, Friday, which is going to be very early, midnight-ish, U.S. Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to try to get as many interviews with some of the biggest names. It's 2 weeks after the Olympia.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
All these big names are chomping at the bit to give their Olympia analysis, and we'll be sure to try to get as many of these big names and try to get them on camera, and we'll get some juicy quotes out of them. But keep an eye out for all those interviews, and then I have my stage interviews. I'm going to get the full schedule tomorrow. So as we get them, as we get everything processed, we'll be dropping everything on the channel, some in clips, some in full form, but especially the stuff that we do, at the boots, like, I'm hoping to get filled tomorrow. That'll probably just be dropped in its entirety, but nonetheless, keep an eye out on the channel, interviews from here at the Dubai Muscle Show. And then again, the Prague Pro is this week. I am in touch with someone who's going to give us a discounted link for the pay-per-view. So it's not available for everyone, but there are about 2 or 3 different entities that are getting this exclusive link. It is for a discount code to watch the pay-per-view for the Prague Pro. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. See you next time.